Hedger Motorsports announces that Alex Bowman will sit out the NASCAR Cup Series race at Talladega Super Speedway, and Kyle Larson and Dale Jr. call out NASCAR officiating for the mistakes they made at Texas. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports and stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to go ahead and start our paint schemes and sponsorship news first. Let's jump into those really quickly. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sage Carib's 2022 Peachwood floor covering scheme they're going to be seeing next weekend at the Charlotte Roval. Good to see Sage Carib's going to be back behind the wheel of the NASCAR Xfinity Series 02 car. Hopefully have a good run in this car this next weekend at the Roval. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Josh Bilicki's 2022 insurance scheme they're going to be seeing next weekend at the Roval. Good looking paint scheme, in my opinion. Looks really awesome, and hopefully have a good run in this car at the Roval. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Wayne Sells' 2022 AM Technical Solutions scheme they're going to be seeing this weekend at Talladega. Looks really good in my opinion. Love the pink on it. It looks really awesome, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Talladega. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Davis Starr's 2022 5 Network scheme they're going to be seeing this weekend at Talladega. Not much to say other than the fact it's good to see that Davis Starr has a new sponsor. Excited to see he's got a new paint scheme this weekend at Talladega. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Vargas' 2022 Critical Path Security scheme that are going to be seen next weekend at the Charlotte Roval. Excited to see he has a new sponsor for next week, and he's had a lot of really cool sponsors, including the Reddick sponsor that we are going to see this weekend. Looks good. Excited to see on the racetrack at the Roval. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Johnny Sauter's 2022 Menard scheme they'll be seeing this weekend at Talladega. Man, spotters are going to have a really fun time this weekend with this one. It does look good in my opinion, don't get me wrong. It just looks so cursed because we're used to seeing it on Matt Crafton's car. Looks cursed, but it does also look good in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Bubba Wallace's 2022 Lido scheme with the number 45 card that we're going to see this weekend at Talladega. Not much to say other than the fact the only thing that's kind of different is the 45 number, but I still think the Lido scheme does look solid. Hopefully Bubba will have a good run in this car. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Hammer's 2022 Celsius scheme that we're going to be seeing in the Cup Series race this weekend at Talladega. Awesome to see a Celsius is on the 16. We've seen it on the 31 car earlier this year at Daytona. Hopefully Hammer will have a good chance and won't crash out this time like it did the last time at Talladega for the Cup Series. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Mike Rockenfeller's 2022 Bossier Courses Swamp Rabbit scheme that we're going to be seeing next weekend at the Charlotte Roval. Good looking paint scheme, in my opinion. Looks very solid, and also excited to see that he'll be back behind the wheel of a 77 car at the Roval. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is BJ McLeod's 2022 Motorsports game scheme that I believe we're going to be seeing at Homestead Miami Speedway. They've got a designer who's a really good artist designing the car for them, and honestly, even though I'm not a big fan of the company themselves, I think the car looks solid and looks good in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Cody Ware's 2022 NervTech Breast Cancer Foundation scheme that we're going to be seeing this weekend at Talladega. Looks good in my opinion, looks very solid, and I've been a big fan of the NervTech cars that Cody Ware's had. This one looks great in my opinion. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Dean Thompson's 2022 Uni-Shipper scheme that we'll be seeing this weekend in the Truck Series race at Talladega. Looks good in my opinion, looks very solid, and excited to see that he will have a new paint scheme this weekend at Talladega. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the purse money for Talladega this weekend. Of course, every single week for the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and the Truck Series races happens, Bob Pockers puts out the purse money that we're going to see. So for the Cup Series, it's $8,338,881. For the Xfinity Series, it's $1,653,281. And for the Truck Series, it's $801,669. Pretty solid purse money in my opinion. Of course, for the Cup Series, it all is dispersed by the charter teams, and performance of the last 3 years as well is where the money ends up getting dispersed. So that's the Talladega purses for this weekend. I do think they're really solid purse money. Don't get me wrong. I wish there was a little more money coming for the Cup Series, but it's not a major shot that it's not an insane amount of purse money, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Devonte Adams. As it was announced yesterday that Devonte Adams is going to drive the pace car prior to the Cup race at Las Vegas. Of course, Devonte Adams, who currently plays for the Las Vegas Raiders after leaving, I believe, the Green Bay Packers this past season, he will be the pace car driver. Excited to see that Devonte Adams is coming in there, basically be a pace car driver. Really love that NASCAR is getting involved with the NFL to try to bring some players in the NFL involved in it. I think it's exciting and good to see that Devonte Adams is getting behind the wheel to drive the pace car. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Jessica Fickenscher. As it was announced yesterday that Jessica Fickenscher was named the executive director of the AllStar Race. She has been part of Speedway Motorsports Corporate for a very, very long time, and I think it's good that they have someone like her who has a lot of experience to basically work with the All-Star company. I think it's really good that she'll be able to be the executive director. She's going to have a lot of relationship, and I think it's exciting to absolutely see that they are going to have her be the executive director of the All-Stars. I think it's a great decision, and hopefully it will be really, really good for them as well. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Talladega. Now, it was reported by Jeff Gluck earlier this evening that Talladega has sold tickets to all 50 states and 22 countries of people who are going to the event. He also knows that 70% of the people that are coming in the race are people that are not from Alabama. Of course, Talladega Superspeedway is one of the most popular tracks in NASCAR currently at the moment. And see all the different cultures and different backgrounds going to Talladega this weekend, I think is absolutely phenomenal and absolutely really, really great. So I'm really happy to see this for sure. I'm glad to see there's so much diversity and different backgrounds going to this event as well. Of course, I believe they're going to be having that block party for Bubba Wallace's group as well, which I think is really exciting to see. That's really exciting. I think people will definitely go check that out, and it's really cool to see, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Rheem. As it was announced earlier this morning that Rheem has signed a contract extension to continue sponsoring Christopher Bell and Joe Gibbs Racing for the 2023 season. This also confirms, as expected, that Christopher Bell is going to continue to drive the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing in 2023. First of all, excited to see that Rheem is back sponsoring Christopher Bell. It's not a major shock and surprise. Bob Pockers had noted that they expected that Rheem will also sponsor Kevin Harvick as well in 2023. But it's good for Christopher Bell that he'll be back with the team as well. I think he's been generally the best performing Joe Gibbs Racing driver this year, and I think the 20 team, which has been a while since this has been the case, but I think it's the first time since 2013 that the 20 car has been the best car at Joe Gibbs Racing this year. So it's good to see that Rheem is back, loyal sponsorship with the team, and it will keep Christopher Bell in the ride as well. I think that's really exciting and really, really great to see, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Caswell. As Caswell is going to drive the 34 for Jesse Wuji Motorsports next weekend at the Charlotte Roval. He'll become just the third driver to drive the 34 this year. Jesse Wuji's piloted the car many times. Kyle Weatherman's piloted the car many, many times to really help the team qualifying events. And now Caswell is going to have an opportunity to drive. Honestly, I know that people kind of criticize this team, but I think that this team actually is a very solid team if you put the right people in it. And I think with Caswell driving the 34 car next weekend, I think this car will contend for a top 15 and a top 20. Kaz is a really good road course racer. We've seen what he's been able to do with Young's Motorsports in the past. So I really think that this is a fantastic move to see Caswell driving this car, and I think he'll actually do really, really well in this car for Jesse Wuji Motorsports next weekend at the Roval, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Rinus VeeKay. As there was a video that came out yesterday or 2 days ago when you're watching this, that Rinus VeeKay was testing a stock car on a short track in the Netherlands. Now, of course, I don't think a lot of people thought it was a NASCAR Euro car that he was testing, but the Euro Series basically confirmed that it's not a Euro Series car that is being tested. But it's very interesting to see that Rinus VeeKay is testing a NASCAR Cup Series car, or a stock car for that matter. Is he interested in maybe coming over to NASCAR? That could be a possible option. Of course, he will be driving, I believe, for Ed Carpenter Racing in 2023 in IndyCar. But maybe he just wanted to test it out, a NASCAR Cup Series car. Maybe he just wanted to test it out, a race car, and test it out. I think it's good. He's definitely testing it out. I think it's really good. And maybe this means that VeeKay is maybe considering making the jump over to NASCAR in the not-so-distant future. I think that'd be really, really fun. But, again, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But it's cool to see they've got a driver like him getting interested in maybe in NASCAR one day. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Chicago Street Course. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern on Wednesday that he reports that Ben Kennedy says that a lot of people signing up for the Chicago ticket info were not previously in NASCAR's database. So the event is poised to mirror the LA Coliseum, having many first-time race attendees. He also knows, Adams knows, that next week tickets are expected to go on sale. Usually we see a lot of negative reports for Chicago street course, but it's good to see a really positive report for the Chicago street course. See that you've got a lot of people from the Chicago area who are not NASCAR fans, and I think that was the goal with this event, just like the LA Coliseum, is to try to bring a lot of fans into the sport that are not really associated with NASCAR. So I think that this is actually a really positive thing. I know we've seen a lot of negativity with this, but I actually think that this is a really positive move, and glad to see that more people are becoming interested. They haven't really been interested in NASCAR. I think that this is a positive move, and I think that this is great to see that more people are interested. As noted, tickets are going to go on sale next week. Maybe I'll purchase a ticket to go to the event. Who knows? But I think it's good to see that there's been a lot more interest for this event. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Juncos Racing. As it was confirmed earlier today, the Juncos Racing is going to enter 2 cars in Indy Lights in 2023. A lot of organizations have announced plans for Indy Lights. I think HG Motorsports is going to have around 7 or 8 entries next year. Cape Motorsports is going to be a 2 or 3 car entry team. Force Indy, which will have Ernie Francis Jr. and I think somebody else. And also we have Juncos Racing having unclear who's going to be driving behind the wheel, but excited to see the Juncos is back. They've been in Indy Lights in the past. I think they've won championships in Indy Lights as well. So it's exciting to see they have a team like Juncos entering. I think it's great for the sport, and really excited to see that we're going to see Juncos Racing enter the series once again in 2023. I don't think they were in it this year, if I'm not mistaken. Some will have to correct me on that in the comments if they were, but good to see the Juncos is going to be entering 2 cars for Indy Lights heading into 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Benjamin Peterson. As it was announced yesterday that Benjamin Peterson has been confirmed that he will join AJ Foyt Racing in 2023 full-time, driving the number 14 car. Benjamin Peterson picked up his first Indy Lights win about a month or 2 ago near the end of the Indy Lights season, and there were a lot of talk he was looking to maybe go to IndyCar racing in 2023. Well, he got his wish. Of course, he'll be taking over the 14 car that was last year piloted by Kyle Kirkwood. I'm going to be honest, I don't expect that same kind of level of performance from Benjamin Peterson, and that's no disrespect to Benjamin. I think Benjamin's a really solid driver. He did a lot of great stuff in Indy Lights. I just think that Kyle Kirkwood right now is a better driver than Benjamin, so I'm not expecting much from Peterson. And let's be honest, AJ Foyt Racing generally is in the back of the pack most of the time. Last year, they generally really struggled. I know Kyle tried to get the best runs they could, but they're not right now the fastest organization. They're not a bad organization by any means, but they're generally one of the slower organizations, and they haven't really been a team that's been up front and contending for victories overall. So it's definitely good to see they brought Benjamin up. I really hope that he can do really good for team, and maybe he'll impress me to where he can get the scene to contend for a lot of wins. And honestly, that'd be really awesome to see AJ Foyt Racing kind of get back to where they used to be a really fast team. But they just haven't been that really fast team that has showed up on a week-by-week basis. But then again, I'm still very excited to see that he's getting an opportunity to race in IndyCar full-time next year. I think it's great to see. It's very awesome, and I'm glad to see that Benjamin Peterson will go full-time in IndyCar. Excited to see that he's joining IndyCar in 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about William Byron. As Bob Pock reported earlier today that William Byron's appeal is not going to happen this week, and the appeal for the 25-point penalty for William Byron is going to happen next week before Rosso. For those who've not been paying attention, I talked about this yesterday on the channel, that William Byron has received a 25-point penalty for basically running to the back of Denny Hamlin under caution. The argument is that basically with NASCAR's really bad officiating, that they probably shouldn't have not have gotten, or they're trying to see if they can rescind the penalty just a little bit going into this weekend and for next weekend as well. I don't think they're going to win the appeal, but I don't blame them for trying to appeal these penalties. But I think at the same time, he kind of admitted, he didn't fully admit it per se, but he kind of did admit that he kind of intentionally, he didn't intentionally say he intentionally wrecked him, but he kind of admitted that he ran into the back of Denny Hamlin. So I'm not surprised that he's going to appeal those penalties. But that being said, I don't think he's going to, I personally don't think he's going to win the appeal. But I do believe that there's a chance that something could happen. Maybe they do get it rescinded a little bit if the fine being presented from $50,000 a little bit, but I think that there needs to be somewhere where NASCAR needs to draw the line of certain situations, and we'll get into that in a little bit later in this video. But I think that it's not a surprise that they're going to try to appeal it. But again, I think they're unfortunately going to end up losing the appeal. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Danny Kvyat. As this was announced earlier this evening that Danny Kvyat is going to drive the 26 for Sam Hunt Racing next weekend at the Charlotte Roval, making his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut. It's also expected that Danny Kvyat is going to drive the 26 for Team Haysbert in a Toyota next weekend at the Roval as well. So it's expected he will be doing double duty. Danny Kvyat will have actually a really, really fast car. No disrespect to Team Haysbert. They're not the fastest organization in the world. So I'm not expecting Danny Kvyat to have really great performances in the Cup Series. That being said, in the Xfinity Series, Sam Hunt Racing's had times, especially with guys like John Nemechek, where they have shown really, really good pace and really good speed as well. So I think that this is a really good move for Kvyat. What are my expectations in the 26 car? I think a top 20 is going to be realistic for him, but I can see a top 10 run for the 2016. We've seen his team run really solid with really good drivers like John Hunter Nemechek, who had a lot of laps at Phoenix, who had some laps at Darlington, almost won at Darlington in the spring. I think that Kvyat is going to be someone that's going to surprise a lot of people this weekend, and I expect that Danny Kvyat is going to have a really, really strong run next weekend at the Roval, at least on the Xfinity Series side of things. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Cody Ware. As it was revealed earlier today from basically Bob Pockers and every media outlet that Cody Ware has been medically cleared to race at Talladega and will drive the 51 for Rick Ware Racing once again this weekend. Cody Ware said he expected that he would be racing this weekend, but had not been confirmed by anybody that he would be racing, had to get medically cleared. He will have crutches this weekend, so if you're seeing him around the track, you'll probably notice that Cody Ware has crutches. But good to see Cody Ware back behind the wheel. He suffered a very nasty and violent wreck with the next-gen car, which we'll be criticizing here near the end of this episode when we do talk about Alex Bowman. But when it comes to Cody Ware, I'm very happy to see he's been medically cleared to race after that nasty and scary incident that he had on the racetrack at Texas, where he hit the outside wall extremely hard and then came back to the inside and literally collapsed multiple times on the ground trying to stand up and got loaded on the stretcher, but luckily he got sent to the infield care center. First of all, good to see Cody Ware's back behind the wheel. Though he's not 100% perfect and not going to be 100% better anytime soon, it's good to see that Cody Ware has gone ahead, and it's good to see that Cody Ware will go ahead and be back behind the wheel of the 51 car. Happy to see that for sure. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Joey Logano. Now, Joey Logano was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, either on a show that he does, or he was on a show with another individual. And Joey Logano was kind of talking about the tire issues from Texas Motor Speedway. And he kind of called for more practice to end up taking place to fix a lot of these tire issues. If you watched the NASCAR Cup Series race from Texas Motor Speedway, you saw that there were a ton of major tire issues in the race. Many leaders, including Kevin Harvick and Martin Truex Jr. and Chase Elliott, and about 6 or 7 other drivers, including Alex Bowman, suffered wrecks due to tire problems. Ronnie Childers explained an explanation earlier this week in a tweet talking about why we saw a lot of tire problems, and a lot of drivers were very vocal, including Denny Hamlin, on these situations. Joey Logano calling for more practice, I think 100% makes a lot of sense, and I will explain why. I think one of the biggest things that's really caused a lot of the issues with the tires, I think, is a lack of practice. I think one of the biggest things that these teams only get 20 minutes, and you're not able to get very long runs. I believe that if you give these teams more practice, I don't think you're going to have as many tire problems. I really don't think you're going to. So I think personally, there needs to be more practice heading into 2023. I'm not saying we need to basically have 2 or 3 hours of practice every single week, but I do personally believe that we need to go right ahead and have a lot more practice time, because this is stuff that absolutely needs to be addressed and stuff that I think that could fix. We could fix a lot of these tire issues. We can really right now fix a lot of these tire problems, I believe. Not 100% perfectly. I think we'll still have tire issues, absolutely. But I do believe that if we go ahead and have some more practice time available, I really believe that some of these tire issues are going to be resolved, and some of these mechanical problems are going to be resolved as well. That's what practice generally is for. I hope NASCAR is listening to Joey Logano, and I do hope that they are considering giving out some more practice time going forward. It needs to happen. Hopefully NASCAR is already considering adding more practice time heading into the 2023 season. I would love for that to happen, and hopefully NASCAR is looking into that. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about NASCAR. Now, according to Austin Konetsky, who works at Sportsnet, he reports that there is a NASCAR announcement that is going to be taking place on October 2nd, about 2 hours before the NASCAR Cup Series race at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, this, of course, is for Talladega this weekend. A lot of people really don't know what this big announcement is going to be. Could it be that they're announcing an extension with Goodyear? That could be a very possible option. Could it be an announcement of a strike from drivers? That could be a possible option. Or what is NASCAR looking to do? Maybe that they're going to announce the 2023 rules package for next year. That actually could be what they might be announcing. Honestly, I really don't know what NASCAR is going to be announcing. It could be something really, really big and really, really serious. There has been some speculation for sure, maybe around certain things that came out today that really could be a big thing that's going on with NASCAR. I really don't know what it's going to be, or could it just be an NFT at this point? Who really knows? But I think that this announcement could definitely be really, really interesting. And when it does officially get revealed, we're probably going to be talking about that. And I think it definitely is a big story that probably will end up being covered. We're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to what this announcement is. But it sounds like that this announcement that's coming, it could be really, really big. And it sounds like it's going to be a pretty big deal that's going to be coming. Because it's 2 hours before the Cup Series race. That's kind of crazy that it's 2 hours before the race. And we'll probably talk about it on Monday or Tuesday, whenever that does happen. But it's definitely interesting to see for sure. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Conor Daly. Now, in very, very shocking and very positive news, Conor Daly announced today that he'll be making his NASCAR Cup Series debut next weekend at the Charlotte Roval, driving the number 50 for the Money Team organization. I believe Tony Eury Jr. is going to be the crew chief, and Bidnow is going to sponsor as well. And there is some talk and conversation. He also could race at Las Vegas in this car as well, so he can race back-to-back weeks in the 50 car. This will be the first time that the Money Team has entered a NASCAR Cup race since before the Gateway weekend during the Coke 600 weekend. So the first time since the last time we were at Charlotte Motor Speedway for a race. This will be the first time that he's behind the wheel of a race. First time the 50 team is back. First of all, very excited to see that this team is back. It's been a while since they've made a start, so it's good to see that they're back. I know they're not the fastest organization, but they have basically not finished outside the top 30, so they've been consistent to finish inside the top 30. Second thing, Conor Daly racing in the 50 car. Was not expecting this. Maybe he's looking to jump over to NASCAR officially. I know he's been associated with Dirty Mo Media, but he also has a contract racing IndyCar next year, so he's got Bidnow joining him there, has got the sponsorship and funding. Good to see he's joining. It's fantastic. And you think about a lot of these drivers who've made starts. Guys like Greg Biffle returning. Jacques Villeneuve making a return. Other drivers like Boris Said making one-off starts. And other drivers have joined the series like a Danny Kvyat, Larice Hasemans. You think about Kimi Räikkönen, Mike Rockenfeller. The names of guys racing in this event next week is good to see. Just thinking about this, so when it comes to Conor Daly, my expectations are not going to be too high. I know he's got a lot of road course experience in IndyCar, but I'm not expecting much because, again, I think this team will have decent pace and speed. I think a lot of it will matter with the driver talent, and Conor's a really, really talented driver. So I do think Conor Daly is going to do really solid in this car. I do expect that he will have I expect that Conor Daly is actually going to do really good, as good as he can in this car for the experience he has. And it's not the first time he's racing NASCAR. He's racing the Camp World Truck Series with Nice Motorsports, but wasn't the most competitive driver out there. That being said, though, I think Conor Daly driving this car and racing in the Cup Series, good to see. He probably, again, that NASCAR experience he's previously had, I think that's why he got approved. I don't think he has to do as much testing, but it's good to see that Conor Daly is going to race in the Cup Series, and maybe he's being a candidate to potentially run part-time with Money Team next year. Maybe in Daytona 500, perhaps. That could be a possible option, but we'll definitely for sure have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Tyler Reddick. Now, this is a story that I've not been able to really cover much this week with all the chaos that's been going on. But Tyler Reddick, after winning the NASCAR Cup Series race at Texas Motor Speedway, he was asked a pretty important question about if he has any regrets about leaving Richard Childress Racing and going over to 23XI Racing. This year, Tyler Reddick has had a really stellar year. He has scored 3 victories this year, with Rich Cho's Racing, including winning the most recent race at Texas in order to picking up his first oval win in the NASCAR Cup Series. He's already got 2 road course victories and now an oval victory. And this, of course, is also his second victory since announcing he'd be leaving Rich Cho's Racing to go over to 2311 Racing. Tyler Reddick says that he really has no regrets about leaving Richard Childress Racing and going over to 2311 Racing. I am really not surprised by this announcement that he really right now doesn't have any regrets at the moment. And I do think one of the big reasons why I don't think Tyler Reddick really has a lot of regrets, I think there's 2 big reasons. One, I think if Richard Childress picking up Kyle Busch for next year, of him going over to Rich Childress Racing next year, I think that's a major key why he really doesn't have regrets, because they're getting a really good driver to basically replace him. Yes, is Reddick probably going to be as good in 2023 as he was in 2022? No, because he's going to be in a third Richard Childress Racing car, more than likely in that same car that Austin Hill ran in Michigan earlier this year. So he's not going to get the same equipment that he's had in the past. But I still think Reddick is going to do really solid next year. And I think when you look at 2311 Racing and where that team currently right now is generally going, that team is a very, very solid organization right now. You look at stats at 2311 this year, they've been getting better every single week, really from the beginning to end of year. They've scored 2 wins so far this year, 3 wins as an overall organization. And I just look at the stats of what's been going on with Tyler Reddick at the moment, and I really think that this is generally going to be a really good move for him to go over there. Is it a regret the fact he's probably leaving Rich Childress Racing with him being a generation talent? Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of a regret for the team, but I think, again, with the pickup of Kyle Busch going over there, I think Kyle Busch is going to be better than what Reddick was in that 8 car. And again, that's no disrespect to Tyler Reddick, because Reddick's had 3 wins this year. When you're being told that I think Kyle Busch is going to be better than you, that's not really a major regret. I don't think that's a bad thing, because Kyle Busch, I still think, despite Reddick being better than Kyle Busch generally this year and being a championship threat until he got eliminated the past couple weekends ago, I still think Reddick is a really good driver. And I think going into next year, I think he's not really going to have that chip on the shoulder. But there's also a lot of talk he's probably not going to be involved in the meetings as well. So that's probably one thing he does regret. But I don't think he fully regrets it. And I think he understands the process and the procedure. I mean, Richard told him about an hour before the Kyle Busch announcement that he was not going to be driving the 8 car. And, of course, Reddick ain't going to get Randall Burnett to work with. But, again, I do think Reddick's decision, I know it's a controversial decision for sure, nonetheless, for Reddick to leave the team the way he did. I think he understands and knows that he's really the big reason why a lot of this stuff ended up happening. That being said, though, I don't think he really regrets the decision, and honestly, I don't blame him for not regretting it. I think he's going to be going to a team that's on the up and up. I think 2311 is really heading in the right direction, and I think the team's starting to really get in good hands currently at the moment. So good to see that he kind of doesn't regret the situation. He probably kind of does a little bit, but at the same time, it sounds like he does not regret leaving the team. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode, as we're going to talk about Dale Jr. and Kyle Larson. Now, obviously, we've already talked about some major penalties that came out this past Wednesday. First with Ty Gibbs and Ty Dillon with the contact on pit road, and then but basically William Byron getting handed a 25-point penalty after NASCAR could have handed out on Sunday some penalties. Well, Dale Jr. and Kyle Larson gave their takes on the situation. First, Dale Jr. says that he has a hard time believing that they did not see it. Dale Jr. says he was sitting in the booth next to him. He says, but he probably does agree that he believes that Scott Miller and them were probably focusing on the wreck, but they weren't focused on what happened with William Byron, and they didn't realize what had happened. He probably believes that they didn't see it, but he says he doesn't really believe they see it. They probably think that they were focused, but he has a hard time believing that. Then Kyle Larson said something that I thought was very interesting. He kind of calls out NASCAR and says NASCAR and Byron made mistakes. First, with Byron running to the back of Denny Hamlin, that was a major, major mistake that Byron ran into the back of him. But he also called NASCAR out by saying that NASCAR should have absolutely officiated this during the race. 25 points might be a little bit too steep and a little bit too harsh, but perhaps because he would have lost about 20 positions with the penalty he received, and probably should have been a 20-point penalty instead. I 100% agree with Dale Jr. and Kyle Larson. I think it's ridiculous that they did not see it. I really have a hard time believing they were not able to see it. Again, I think they were focused on the Mark Truex Jr. wreck, and they weren't paying attention. But you've got spotters all around the track, and you've got TV camera and people and fans finding this stuff and figuring this stuff out where NASCAR officials are figuring out. NASCAR fans, and no disrespect to fans at NBC, but officials should be able to find a lot of the stuff before the NASCAR fans find it. And Larson's absolutely right on one thing, that yes, Byron absolutely 100% made a mistake, but NASCAR also made a mistake for basically not going in right ahead. And just, they honestly should have, in my opinion, they should have made the call in the race. They've got to get officiating better. And the officiating has been a major, major problem in NASCAR. They are not penalizing these guys during races. And NASCAR needs to, in my opinion, they need to start penalizing these drivers in the races and not penalizing when the races are over. I just don't understand why we're waiting 2 days for penalties to come out. And we just decide, let's just wait 2 days to hand out penalties. When you could have handed these penalties out in the race. Ty Gibbs should have absolutely been parked for the rest of the race. And honestly, a suspension, I think, was kind of worthy for at least the NASCAR Cup race, maybe the Xfinity Series race as well. But I think, could they have penalized him in the race? Yeah, after the race? Yeah, for sure. But honestly, I think Byron may have gotten a little bit unjustified. Yes, should he have gotten a penalty? Yes. But I think that he should have been sent to the tail end of the longest line. They should have absolutely, and they wouldn't have had to wait till Wednesday to make a decision. Denny Hamlin just wanted Byron to get a penalty. And the fact that they decided, no, we're not going to penalize him, that's just a little absurd to me. How do you not penalize a driver who clearly, in the race, I just don't understand. He clearly intentionally had an issue. And again, they absolutely 100% should, in my opinion, they 100% should have penalized him in the race. The fact that they waited as long as they did to penalize both for drivers, it's absurd to me the way that they waited Wednesday. And he did this with Noah Gragson too. And Gragson should have been parked for the rest of the race for his incident. You should have parked him and taken him out there. You don't wait. They shouldn't be waiting until after the race are over to penalize these guys. No, these situations need to be cleared up and need to be addressed. And officiating has to get better 100%. If this sport is going to want to get better. I understand NASCAR wants to get control of the garage, and they need to get control of the garage. Some of the things that happened on track this year have just been completely unacceptable. But you got to get control of the garage before the weekend's over, and not 2 days after the race over. Not till Tuesday, for that matter. We shouldn't be waiting until Tuesday. This stuff should be addressed on the same day of the race. There needs to be stuff talked about, because NASCAR used to do that, and they've been really, really bad about that, about not penalizing drivers for situations. So that has got to change going into next year, and hopefully the officiating gets better. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story, and the big story of the day, as we're talking about Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman, and we'll talk about him because Alex Bowman had a really bad wreck at Texas Motor Speedway, where Alex Bowman backed into the outside wall. He was complaining that this was the hardest hit that he had suffered. So much that it was announced today, the Hendrick Motorsports revealed that Alex Bowman is going to sit out of the NASCAR Cup Series race of Talladega after experiencing concussion-like symptoms after the NASCAR Cup Series race took place. Noah Gragson is going to drive the 48 car. Originally was going to drive the 62. Noah Gragson is going to drive for the first time for Hendrick Motorsports as a substitute for Alex Bowman. What does that mean as well for Beard Motorsports? Well, Justin Allgaier is going to drive the 62 car for Beard Motorsports this weekend. This is a major, major problem, and this is the second driver to now have to sit out a race this year. Now, Alex Bowman has been granted a playoff waiver. If he is returned next weekend at the Charlotte Roval, he will be okay to race. He'll have to win more than likely at the Roval since he's more than likely out, but I'm not sure if he's going to be back. Gray Guys also issuing an apology later, but I don't really think it's his fault for what really, really happened. I still think the car is 100% at fault for the situation. And then, of course, let's talk about Andy Peter's comments that NASCAR is working on stuff, which they absolutely, I think, are going to work on stuff. But I want to go off on NASCAR, and I want to talk about this. This is now the second time this year, and the second time in a matter of weeks and months that this has happened. First of all, Kurt Busch was sat up for Pocono because of concussion-like symptoms. Granted, Kurt Busch had a lot of instances where Kurt Busch had been involved in a lot of wrecks. Kurt Busch has been involved in a lot of wrecks this year that kind of led up to concussion. And to be fair to Kurt Busch is a much older driver. So it kind of was not a surprise, unfortunately, when he was involved in a lot of wrecks. But Alex Bowman is only 29 years old. I don't think Alex Bowman hasn't involved in a lot of wrecks. I know he's been involved in a wreck at Bristol, but he really hasn't involved in a lot of wrecks this year. And Alex Bowman said on the radio that this was the hardest hit that he has taken since racing this year so far in the next-gen car. And he was hospitalized last year, if I'm not mistaken, in a sprint car wreck. For the fact the guy to say that this is probably the worst hit that he's really had in the next-gen era, that is really, really scary and really dangerous. And it's completely unacceptable for a driver who's only 29, I believe he's 29 years old, turned 29 earlier this year. The fact that he's 29 years old and is having concussion-like symptoms, that is unacceptable. And drivers have been complaining more and more about these next-gen hits. The fact that this has not been addressed yet is really frustrating and really, really tiring. Now, like I mentioned from the Andy Petrie segment, NASCAR is working on things to fix this, but this is just so frustrating to see because we got two drivers now that have sat out because of this, and NASCAR fans right now should absolutely be angry at the moment right now about the situation. I'm telling you right now, I am beyond livid at the moment that this is going on. We've got another driver that is set out. This is stuff that should have been already talked about, and NASCAR still has not publicly released a statement yet on the situation. And Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick were going off on Twitter tonight saying the fact that this is going on is not okay. And NASCAR needs to address the situation, and they need to go out and publicly say that this needs to be fixed. I haven't been this mad in a long time about this. And again, this needs to change. This absolutely needs to be fixed. This is not acceptable, and this is not okay. And this is so frustrating to see that a driver is now sitting out. You've also got a guy that's racing the 48 car that doesn't even want to run any more cup races this year. He said that last week after winning the Xfinity Series race so he can focus on winning the Xfinity Series championship, for God's sakes. He doesn't want to race, and yet he's being forced to race because of a situation of a driver sitting out due to concussion-like symptoms. And good on Alex Bowman for basically taking his health and safety as a priority. And concussions are not a joke. We've had drivers complaining all year about these hits. Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, and everyone I think this complaint. Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, multiple drivers have talked about these hits. Mark Truex on the radio was complaining about it, yet NASCAR's done nothing to address it. I understand that they're working on stuff behind the scenes. I get that 100%. I respect it that they are trying to work on stuff to fix and address this issue. And then I see Brendan Gaughan's take tonight. I just was frustrated about that take tonight. That was a really, really bad take from Brendan Gaughan. So what is NASCAR going to do here? Obviously, the back of the car, there's no crush zones on the back of the car. If you look back throughout history and look at a lot of these hits, go back to Chase Elliott's hit in 2019 at Phoenix, guess what happened? Car kind of disintegrated in the back because it had crushed panels. The hits on the rear of the car are hitting, going in, the energy from the hits are not dissipating. That needs to be fixed, and NASCAR needs to add more crush zones to fix this problem. They have got to get this next-gen car safety under control. This is the most unsafe car we've had in a long time, and NASCAR needs to be better about this. We cannot have situations like what happened in 2000, 2001, where NASCAR was too late to the procedure. They need to get ahead of this, and they need to address this as quickly as possible. We cannot have drivers' careers right now being cut short at the moment because of situations like this. This is so frustrating and so irritating to see. And this is the thing that frustrates me, is that we've had so much good racing this year with the next-gen car on the intermediate tracks, for that matter, and some of the good super speed racing, for that matter. But the safety has justifiably overshadowed everything. And I don't blame safety for over this, because it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating that this is going on at the moment. So what is going to happen? Number one, I'm really worried for Talladega. And honestly, if I'm the drivers, I don't want them to go on strike. It would be fun if they did, but I don't want to see them go on strike. What needs to happen is some needs to either start and park the race, or they are all, I think, going to go single file. I think they're going to go single file Talladega, and honestly, if they do that and they try to be safe so drivers don't get hurt, I won't blame them. I will not blame them for the fact that they go single file this weekend and attack Talladega. If that means we have drivers being safe and not getting injured this weekend, I've got no problem with it. I understand fans are probably not going to be happy about that, and that's understandable. But honestly, the driver's safety matters a lot more than the racing on track. The safety of this car, and we've had complaints about the safety of this car for 2 years now. We had all these complaints back in 2020, for God's sakes, after testing at Auto Club, and then last year with the rumors of the dummy being killed at Talladega during the test. And that's another thing. They didn't test the safety of this car. And honestly, I don't really care what anybody says. We should have had one more year of the Gen 6 car to get these safety problems fixed. I would have rather had one more year with the Gen 6 car just so we could work on the safety of this car. I would have taken one more year of the car being the Gen 6 for this year so they can get the safety problems fixed. Now, I think NASCAR will fix these safety problems? Yes, absolutely. NASCAR has a really good safety track record, and I trust that they are going to fix these problems. But man, this stuff cannot be ignored anymore, and NASCAR needs to release a statement to fix these problems. It's so frustrating to see this because as a fan of the sport, I love NASCAR. I love this sport. But to see what's going on is just so frustrating. And then you think about other drivers like complaining. Hamlin sat on an Xfinity Series race for crying out loud because he was scared he's going to get a concussion. And he's 41 years old, for 41 or 42 now. I hope this stuff gets addressed soon. It sucks. It's unacceptable. And it needs to be addressed as quickly as possible. It's unacceptable. And it needs to be changed as soon and quickly as possible. And I hope NASCAR, you're listening to these fans that want this to change. Drivers are outspoken now. If they go on strike, don't blame them, honestly. And I think things have to change. I'm scared for Talladega, and I don't think the race is going to be good. And honestly, I'm fine with them not making the race good so we can have drivers be safe. That's just my honest opinion on that. So anyway, that is it for today's long NASCAR and motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Notifications on so you be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links in the description below for that. And comment below your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about Alex Bowman sitting out this upcoming race at Talladega? And do you think there needs to be changes to the next-gen car? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Kyle Larson and Dale Jr. calling out the NASCAR officials? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, not sure what's going to be coming out. I'd like to do maybe a little bit of an Xfinity Series or truck review on the channel, perhaps. Maybe if I can get that out on time. Sunday, we'll be reacting to the Cup Series race at Talladega. Really concerned about that. And then Monday, we'll be reacting to some NASCAR news along with other content that's on the way for the end of the year. There may be an update video coming out tomorrow discussing about 2023 and some stuff that's going to be coming during the off-season. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.